Well, welcome back to the shop. This is our next project. This is a 1952 vintage Delta Rockwell model 1460 wood lathe. Looks like it's in great shape. It hasn't been used for a long time, I will tell you that. You can see that the ways are pretty well rusted up. So we're going to obviously pick up that, but it's got quite a few. It's got 3 different tool supports. It's got the, 3 or 4 inch there, 12 inch. It looks like a 24 inch down here. It's got the tailstock, which is free. Actually, it will need to be cleaned up, obviously, the chuck and what have you. It's got a 1 horse Delta motor on it that works, by the way, which is a good thing. Somebody, looks like they needed a cord and kind of went in and took Grandma's iron and ripped the cord off of it and lashed it up to this thing. So that'll obviously have to go. It's got these great cast iron legs, and this is a 16-speed lathe. It's got the countershaft down here, which these were made in 2 different versions. One had this countershaft, the other one just had the motor down here and ran direct drive into the headstock. So we're going to take all this apart. These support boards are the originals that come with it. They're all drilled and they're in great shape. They need to be cleaned up, obviously, and I'll probably put some new finish on them. Not going to sand them too awfully much, but just basically clean them with a good detergent. These legs will need to be scrubbed down and cleaned up, and we'll repaint all that. We'll take all the countershaft out, and we're going to take the whole thing apart and put it back together, clean up the parts. First thing we did, obviously, was pull the bed off of the headstock and everything. I got that on the bench. We'll start working on that. Now I'm going to loosen up these, drop the motor down a little bit, take the belts off, and start taking this apart. Got that off now. We'll put that over on the bench. So, this is the original motor on it, I believe. It's a Delta Rockwell Milwaukee. It's 3/4 horse, 1725 RPMs, and can be wired for either 110 or 220. We have the jack shaft off. There we go. Okay. That's pretty much the easy disassembly process, obviously. Well, we've got all of the initial disassembly done. We've got the bed off, the countershaft, the motor, all this stuff, obviously the tool rests and what have you. That was easy. And we've got the legs and the cross pieces. We've got our bolts and everything labeled, where they came from, so that's good. Now I think the next thing I'll do is start taking this countershaft apart. Okay, we have our countershaft apart here. This was actually pretty straightforward. These bolts, there's one on each end, and they go into this little, the detents on this, these, I guess I'll call them carrier bearings, but they're not bearings, they're just brass bushing in there on each end. So you loosen those up, and those pop right out, and these basically slid off. The only problem I had was the pulley on the motor side was tight, and that was a little troublesome to get off, but we got that off. We'll take a few of these parts apart now, and then we're going to have a session in the parts washer. Okay, we took all the tool rests apart, and there's a shaft that goes through here. Get these all cleaned up, paint these, and get these pins all shined up so they'll work real well. It was pretty straightforward. One thing to note is at this end, I didn't see it right away, and I went to knock it through this way. That's how they come out. And it didn't come right away, so I just looked a little closer, and sure enough, there was a little set screw in there, but you could hardly see it because it was all jumped up with dust and whatnot over the years. Getting the tailstock apart was actually pretty straightforward. I was guessing that this was a tapered chuck, and it was, so I was able to, and it didn't require a lot of tapping. I just knocked it a little bit with a small hammer and it popped right off of there. Then the shaft slides in there on a key, and then there's this adjustment screw, which is a left-hand thread, pops out, and that kind of started the whole thing. I left it in there and popped it out that way a little bit with my soft hammer, or rubber-headed hammer here, and that knocked it right out. So pretty happy with that. So now the tailstock is done. I think I've got this bed cleaned up pretty well. I've got the ways here all about as good as I can get them, I think. I could keep going on it, I suppose, but it's kind of a point of diminishing returns. But then I took a degreaser, some hot water and some degreaser, and cleaned it all off really good. So I think I'm okay with this. When I get ready to paint it, I'll take some acetone and wipe it down. But until then, I'm going to coat these ways with a little thin coat of kerosene, just so they don't rust up on me in the next time before I get a chance to really get into painting and what have you. So I'm going to get this, we'll just set this aside for now, and when I have a chance I'll start working on some of the other parts. But this thing cleaned up really nice. I'm pretty pleased. I've got the headstock taken apart here now. I forgot to turn on the camera, kind of going through this, but what I had was this shaft goes through here, two bearings on each side. They're the same bearing, and there's some shims that are on this outboard side, and then the pulley's in the middle here. So the pulley's got flats on it here. With the set screws set in, you can hold onto that flat and then unscrew. This is a left-handed thread on the outboard side and a right-handed thread on the inboard side. And then I was able to put it in a vise here with some wood shims and a wood piece of wood on the top, and beat the shaft on through here. And then once the shaft was out, I was able to go back, and that brought the bearing with it. That brought the inboard bearing with it. And then I was able to go back in this way and with this 1-inch dowel and knock that outboard bearing out. So actually the bearings look pretty darn good. So now we're ready we've got everything pretty much disassembled. I think this was the last thing I had. That's done. So now we're going to go ahead and clean everything up. I've already started on some of that. I've got some of the jack shaft pieces cleaned over here earlier, and we'll clean up this shaft so that when I put it back in, it'll go in a little smoother, at least with respect to the pulley here. And then we'll start the reassembly. Well, we're going to be doing some painting first, obviously, but I think I've got everything pretty well squared away. And I've got to clean up the tailstock here, clean up the headstock. We'll take those out to the parts washer and get that going. And then we'll get ready to start cleaning things up, run some acetone, and start painting. Okay, I just took these cross pieces over here to the sink. And we're going to use some Murphy's oil soap to clean these up. This is where they blew them off with some compressed air to get all the dust and cobwebs and junk out of them. We're going to take some of this Murphy's oil soap. It usually cleans up wood real good without disturbing any finish, to the extent that there's any finish on this stuff. So we'll clean these up and let them dry off good. On the back side, these are pretty good stuff. I don't know if they look like they're vertical grain fur, actually. On the bottom side here, you can probably see they put some grooves in each of them, and I'm guessing that was to keep them from cupping when they dried out. I just got through taking this tailstock and the headstock castings out to my parts washer and washed them off real good. It's got all the grease and whatnot off. There's still some crap on here that I want to try to get off as best as I can so I can then paint them up. And I think it's just ground in dirt. So I'm using I got a little miniature wire wheel on my die grinder here. And I'm just going through these real lightly, and that brown crap is coming off of there. So I'm not trying to take the paint off, I'm just trying to get that brown junk loosened up. And actually, if you rub it, then it comes loose and gets dirty. So we're going to go ahead and spend a little time and try to get these cleaned up a little bit better than what I was able to get them in the parts washer. Got all the grease off of them, of course, but still some of that film from just years of being out in the weather and use, I guess, is kind of just ground in here. So we're going to see if we can do a little bit better. Take a little piece of 400 grit with some little bit of kerosene in here to kind of get this, clean the junk, the rust out of that, well, not rust, but just grime out of that bushing right here. And I think that'll be good to go. I use this Zap Industrial Purple Cleaner and Degreaser, and it seems to work great on stuff that I use. And I'll give you a little warning. Use this stuff with gloves, because even mixed up a 1/4 to 1 or something like that, it will dry out the oils in your hands for a week, and it'll make your hands feel like sandpaper, because it really just pulls the oil right out of your hands. I learned that lesson the hard way, using it actually full strength. Don't do it. So we'll throw a little bit of that in and wash these down, and then take some compressed air and dry them off and make sure they're good and dry, and we'll call that quits for the day, and we'll move along.